Today I'm going to be reviewing the FiiO K11. Now there are two versions of the K11. There's the regular one at 129, and then there's this one, which is the R2R version at 159. Internally, this does have a 24-bit R2R DAC in it, and that makes this the cheapest R2R device that I've ever reviewed. And I think this thing is really cool. And I think it's cool not just for the R2R DAC inside of it, but the actual features of this are actually pretty good for the price. It's got NOS and OS modes, 3 available gain selections, RCA line outputs for speakers like these little SP3 speakers from FiiO. And it even has features that you don't see on higher end amps, like a time selection for a screen timeout. The inputs are USB-C, optical, and coaxial. And then of course, as mentioned, that R2R DAC inside makes this a pretty interesting option, and it actually has a decent bit of power at 1.3 watts into 32 ohms. Given all the features that are on this makes this a pretty feature-packed product for this price category. And the power output is, I would say, okay. I think it's definitely plenty for most headphones, but it's not going to be the highest spec option in this price range. But this is one of the only options with an R2R DAC that is this price. So this is one of those interesting products where if you want something like this is one of the only ones available. Now, in terms of the design and aesthetics, it's got this kind of very Apple-esque shaping to it. It's quite nice, actually. This does have an external power brick, so this device actually ends up being pretty light. You do have to hold it when you plug in headphones, of course. And the RGB adjustments makes it pretty much applicable to almost any colored setup that might exist. And the RGB is probably better than anything you currently have, actually. This is a lot brighter than some of other FiiO's current products. Like you can see their SP3 RGB is like much less bright than that. Now the sound quality has some characteristics that I really like, some things that are notable, and some decisions that you would have to make in terms of whether or not you would want it based off the sound quality, because it does have some pretty strong characteristics. Overall, whether in NOS or OS mode, there is a decent, like kind of laid back treble approach. It is quite a bit pulled back than what I would consider to be like a reference point at this price point. A lot of people are probably going to say that this is due to the R2R DAC, a little bit smoother of a treble response, and that might very well be true, but I can't verify since I don't have the non-R2R version here to compare against. The way that I would describe it is it sounds like a slow roll off after about 10,000 hertz. It's not a complete block of high end frequencies. You'll definitely hear some stuff, and it doesn't sound muffled. It more just sounds like a slow roll off, like I said. Now there are some distinct benefits and drawbacks to a sound signature like this. And to set an example, I have a very premium IEM here, the FiiO M5s. They're an ultra high end luxury IEM, notably with an eStat driver for the treble response. So this thing on most kind of reference grade amplifiers is maybe even a little bit too bright. It's hyper analytical, it's ultra precise, it's razor sharp up there in a way that in its own way is very pleasing, it's very informative, but to some people who prefer a more musical and less technical sound, this is probably not going to be their preference. Now on an amplifier like this, which actually plays IEMs fairly well and has gain stage settings so you can set it to low and it plays these really nicely. But the treble roll-off maintains a lot of the detail I would look for and expect, just not necessarily the forwardness. Now, on a darker headphone, I think this is going to double up that effect of darkness and it's going to be even darker. On a brighter headphone, I think this is going to reduce that top end just a little bit to make it a little bit more engaging and enjoyable. Now, the trick is in the usability of this. If you pair this with the wrong devices, I think that this might even be a little bit too dark. If you pair this with the right devices, you can hit a sweet spot. And if you pair this with really bright devices, you can help quell some of that brightness. I think a prime headphone that this would be really good for would be something like an HD 800S. A little bit too bright in the top end. For me, I'm always EQing that headphone to be a little bit less bright, and this just naturally does pretty much what I would do on that headphone. Compared to previous R2R DACs that I've heard, I don't think the mid-range is quite as good, but it's also substantially less, and you get an amplifier with it on top of all that. So I'm not gonna harp on it too hard. I think the biggest thing for me is there isn't as much separation between the vocalists and the background instruments as I would like. There is a decent bit of vocal warmth that is added with this R2R system compared to, let's say, topping amps, for example, but not overly so. It's not quite to the level of tubes. It's not quite to the level of what people would consider like a really warm sounding amplifier, but it is a little bit shifted away from kind of a topping sterile like NFCA style amp, for example. Now, bass response on low impedance dynamic headphones when it's in high gain sounds awesome. And this even has enough power to play most planars. I played the Meze Empyrean 2 just fine on this and really liked it. I played headphones like the Azurus and the Hedinus, which are dynamic headphones, and it played those really well and I liked it. But I think once you get into ultra demanding planars, you will probably want a little bit more power than this currently offers. I think for almost every dynamic headphone and for almost every kind of budget planar, things like Sundara, things like the FiiO FT5, those sort of headphones, this is going to play very well with. When you get into ultra high-end luxury stuff, not that typically you'd be pairing this with it, but if you did, you might run into some limitations, especially for bass. It might hit a little flat. Now, sound staging is similar to the mid-range. I think that for the money, it's fine. I think if you were to spend a little bit more money, you might be rewarded with a wider soundstage on a different amplifier. But the soundstaging that is there is pretty good, and if you pair it with super crazy audiophile tracks like Sessions from the 17th Ward album from Amber Rubarth, you're gonna be just fine if you like soundstage. This can still display crazy songs like that really well. So my conclusion, should you buy it? Completely depends on what type of sound signature you actually like. If you like a warmer, smoother, more classically musical sound signature, this is gonna be right up your alley. I think it's a great budget option with lots of good features. And for the price range, I think overall it has really good sonic properties. The question that I wish I could answer, but unfortunately can't, is whether or not this is worth the premium over the regular K11. I can say I'd have no problem recommending this to the person who was aware of its sound characteristics and wanted that. I think for that type of person, it's a wonderful device. And I really like using it with things that are really bright and really sensitive. So yeah, if you're listening to this and these features sound like benefits and not limitations, then I'd say go for it. It's a great amp. All right, that's my time. Thanks a lot.